So Paul has been laying the groundwork in the first half of the book of Colossians around the virtues, just the marvel of his presence, the wonder not only of who he is, but also who he calls us to be. Paul's, just his passionate work that we might attain to the fullness of who Christ is. All that has been groundwork. And now we come, as we're looking at chapter 3, into the more practical manifestation of the virtues that the Lord calls us to cultivate in our lives. Last week we were at the tail end of, there we go. Look at there, verse 7. Here there is not Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all and in all. And he brings that, this is an encouraging word, the mystery of Jesus at work in the world, at work in the community, at work in his church, at work in our lives. And he calls us to put away, to die to the things that are of the earth. Those things that would hold us down, that would anchor in those dark vices which bring isolation and division. And he calls us to put on Christ, who is in all and is all. And we could just think about that for the rest of our lives, and just glorious things would continue to open up before us. I encourage you to do that. This morning we're taking a look at what I'm calling the virtues of unity. Colossians 3, 12 through 15. The apostle writes, "Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these things, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful." And be thankful. So we're going to take 3 steps this morning. The clear end to which the Lord is taking us. We're going to take a look at the unity of virtues, and then, of course, the King's peace that he calls to be the center of our lives. But first, the clear end. Verse 3:14 here, "And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." As we began this series way back when, I shared that I do believe that this is the heart of Paul's letter. This is the central thing that Paul recognizes that Jesus is doing as he died on the cross in order that we might all be pulled together. Above all these things, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And the word that Paul uses throughout this letter could be translated perfect or perfection. It's where we get the word telescope. Remember? Anybody know what that Greek word is? Telos. Very good. So you get the gold star. Right, telos. As you look through a telescope to see far away, to see the end, to see where we're going, or better, to see where the Lord is taking us. See? Where is he taking us? He's taking us to this place of perfect harmony. The New International Version expresses it as perfect unity. The New King James follows Old King James by talking about the bond of perfection. And there you see that telos word, perfection, the bond of perfection, meaning this is where the Lord is taking the church. It's where the Lord is taking us, which is right in line with what Jesus prays. In John 17:21, one of my key life verses, that they may all be one. Just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they may also be in us, that the world may believe that you have sent me. This is called the high priestly prayer, the prayer Jesus prayed just before he was betrayed into the hands of sinners. And we see what is at the center of Jesus' understanding about what he's doing and why, that we all might be one. And that's the kicker. Just as. Everyone say just as. Just as. Now that blows me away. Just as you, Father, are in me and I in you. Just as. As we think about that, we recognize that the unity that the Lord's seeking to pull together is not on our own terms. It's not the lowest common denominator. You know, we're all breathing, so we all so we all ought to get together and figure out how to do that. No. Man, the highest call, just as Jesus was submitted to the will of the Father, absolutely submitted to the Father's intention, and in that way, Jesus manifested this profound union as a part of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, just as. Right? Woo! That they may be in us, that we may be in him. Woo. Wow. Is that what Jesus is up to? That's exactly what Jesus is up to. And Paul understands that. So he's running around the Mediterranean world, recognizing that includes not just the Jews, God's chosen people, but also the Gentiles. And that's what got him into trouble, right? That he was brazenly inviting the Gentiles to open the hearts to the living presence of Jesus through faith, to be saved by grace. And that's why we're here in this room, because that's what the Lord is doing. Amen? Okay, that's the clear end. That's what the Lord is up to, right? And recognizing that, Paul brings us to these, he begins to name these unity virtues. And this is not a complete list that Paul is going to share. It's just, virtues like things, behaviors like these. Now, last week, we took a look at the crisis of isolation and division. Okay, so this is for Bree and Daniel, because they weren't here Sunday, so I want to bring them on board, all right? If you let your eyes go up a few verses to verse 5, we see the crisis of isolation. Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Remember, right? Those are things that are on the inside that nobody can see until we act on them, and they're I call them the vices of isolation, because that's the road to self-medication, just trying to get myself through a painful day or whatever. Okay? The crisis of isolation, which is supposedly, then Paul says in verse 6, on account of these the wrath of God is coming, and these you too once walked when you were living in them. And then verse 8, but now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscene talk from your mouth. Do not lie to one another. Right? And that's the crisis of division. Because the passions of isolation will always lead to profound division, as your presence in my life threatens my preferred way of self-care, of self-medication. And what pops out? Anger, wrath, malicious talk. And those are public things, right? That engages the community. Remember that? That was last week. You guys get that? You're up to speed. See, you guys saved 30 minutes, right? And you got last week's sermon. Okay. Those are the unity. So the unity virtues speak right into that. So look how Paul transitioned into this. Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved. Oh. Who are we? God's chosen ones, holy and beloved. That means, right, it's not that we are acceptable to God when we embrace these virtues and our life looks like these virtues. No. Jesus died on the cross so that we can experience the fullness of the Father's love and realize that we are chosen, holy, and beloved before any work of transformation, right? It's because I know that I'm loved, that I experience the fullness of God's affection as I quiet my heart and meet with Him and open the Scriptures and all we do in those, in the spiritual disciplines that the Lord invites us to practice so that we can be present to Him and know the magnitude of His love. And in the context of the magnitude of His love, take a hard look at ourselves in the mirror and say, oh my, I'm not quite who the Lord calls me to be. Amen? Right? I love it that Paul begins there. Okay, is there any question about that? You, as you open your heart to Jesus, what you have opportunity to experience is that you are one of His chosen ones, holy and beloved. And if it doesn't start there, everything else I'm going to say is nothing but frustration. Because the evil one will use our meager attempts to get it right to shame us and condemn us and all of that. Right? But if we know we're holy and beloved, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. Yes? Right? Okay, and then he comes, and then comes this list. And again, this is not an exhaustive list at all, but you can recognize how these virtues bind us together. Compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Compassionate hearts. Yeah, that's the, and the word there in the original language is your guts. Is your guts moved when you see the needs of those around you? It's a real connection. It's a real passion because we see and it's not right and it's something I got to do. That's what Paul means by this passionate hearts, not to wall ourselves off to the needs of one another, but to open ourselves to those needs and to feel those needs deeply. Kindness, humility, meekness, patience. Recognizing that, unless the Lord moves in my life, unless the Lord moves in our relationships, all is lost. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not well connected enough. That drives me to Coop's prayer of help me, Jesus, in the midst of overwhelming need. Yes? And as I'm honest about who I am in the world of need, but realizing that the Lord is present and wants to work through me, what's He going to cultivate in me? See, what's going to emerge? Compassionate heart, kindness, humility, meekness, patience. And Paul names them because we need to be open to becoming those kinds of people. Recognizing that in a hard, tough world, most folks grow up being hard, being in charge, being at the center, doing everything in my power to make it happen, and I can be successful, I can be vigorous, I can be passionate, I can be strong, but it destroys community. See? Because I think it all depends on me. No, it doesn't depend on me. It depends on Jesus, but He invites me to be involved in what He's doing. Everyone recognize that? So critical. That is the Jesus difference in a hurting and broken world. I don't know what needs to happen, but I know the Lord does. And I know He wants to use me and He wants to use us. Help me, Jesus. You see that? That's the virtues of unity. Because if I'm manifesting those things, it's more likely you're going to come along beside and help me. You're going to hook up with me. You're going to encourage me. I'm going to encourage you, and we're going to be bound together. Yes? Okay, and then, because Paul knows we live in a real world, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you. Okay, so this is mea culpa. So, Candy, I'm sorry. Okay, I've had a chance to call her, in private, but it was a public sin, public violation, so I'm going to publicly repent here and now. So we're at praise team practice yesterday, and what you need to know about me, and you can ask Chris, I'm a task guy. I'm a get her done guy, all right? Now, if I got nothing to do, I'm the best pastor you've ever seen. If I'm just floating down the river, and the sun is shining and I got nothing to do but love the people around me, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to love you and you're going to be glad you know me. But, yeah, if there's a job to be done, like hanging Christmas decorations, you want to hold me accountable, show up Monday at 10 o'clock and help us hang Christmas decorations. Okay, and you're going to see if Kyle is manifesting a compassionate heart, right? Kindness, humility, meekness. Okay. Because as task-oriented people, and you may be a task-oriented people, the focus is on the job. Right? And I really mean this. Getting a job done means I'm caring for the people who are going to benefit from the job. I mean, that's where my heart is. But the people doing the job with me, what they'll experience is a field marshal on the field of battle throwing people into the slaughter to make it happen. Sometimes. A lot worse 20 years ago, right, Sue? Right? Man. So Candy's up here and she wants to, and she comes on Saturday to sing with us and she was going on that side of Sue when I barked at Candy. Candy, this side is Sue. And it was an order. This side is Sue. Right, Candy, right? And Candy, right, gentle, prayerful Candy, she says, patience, Kyle. Okay? And she didn't say it loud, but I heard it, right? And I go home and I look at Colossians 3, right? Colossians 3, verse 12. Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Oops. You with me? And you know what Candy's doing? She's bearing with me. She doesn't throw the microphone down and slam out of the building, never to come back. She says, Kyle is a knucklehead. I know he loves me. I know she didn't say that. She may have thought that, but she would never say it. Right? Bearing with one another. Because know what I'm going to do? I'm going to step on your toes. And know what you're going to do? You're going to step on the toes of those around you. It's not because you're mean-spirited. It's because of the giftedness that God made you and all that kind of stuff. And that stuff happens. Right? Yes? Did you hear that? She prayed this morning. She said, may we use our talents wisely. What she meant to say was, may Kyle use his talents wisely. All right. You're so gentle, Candy. All right. But I can take it. Okay. Forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you. And then we get this. And the contemporary church has a hard time with this kind of language in the New Testament, but it's everywhere. So you also must forgive. You must forgive. It's not an option. Okay? And that's the critical call. To forgive one another. So in Matthew chapter 6, just after the Lord gives us the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive one another, Jesus goes on, for if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Ooh. That feels like a works righteousness, doesn't it? You mean I've got to do something in order to be forgiven? See, and that's the way we tend to think. We got to step out of that box and take a kind of a bigger view and realize what Jesus is talking about. What Jesus has in mind is the clear end that he's working. We must forgive one another because that's what Jesus is doing. He's pulling us together in the bonds of perfection, or in perfect harmony. And the whole concept, the whole notion of being forgiven by the Father is that we can enter into that wonderful human community which is holy, right, and beloved, that manifest this dramatically different way of being in the world, which is harmony, connected, right? And what Jesus is saying, hey, that's the game. Just as the Father and I are one, it's really important for you to embrace the vision that my Father has, that he intended all along in creation. See? Does that make sense? That's what he's inviting us to. That's what he's inviting us to. And if we have a hard time forgiving, you know what our next prayer is? Help me, Jesus. See? Help me, Jesus. And he will get us there. Amen? How serious is the Lord on that? Serious. So you also must forgive. Yes? Okay. And then he speaks to the king's peace. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. See, that's the outflow of these virtues of unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which you were called in one body. Yeah. Now, in the original context, the central kind of cultural meme in Jesus' day was the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Augustus Caesar, who was called the Son of God, okay, he was named Son of God by the Senate in Rome because Julius Caesar, his adopted father, was named a god after he was assassinated. Caesar Augustus was called the Son of God. Okay? You know what else he was called? Prince of Peace. Okay? Because just before Caesar Augustus became the first Roman emperor, Rome was at civil war. Legions were battling against each other. If you remember Brutus, who's, et tu, Brute, as Brutus assassinated, and the little senators assassinated Caesar, and what lit off was this bloody civil war. Mark Antony and Octavius, who became Caesar Augustus, and Pompey, they were just killing each other. Octavia defeated all the competitors. He brought peace to the whole world. And the Roman coin would say, Son of God, Prince of Peace. If you had a Roman coin, that's what it would be. A picture of Augustus Caesar, Son of God, Prince of Peace. Paul knows that. This is a cultural meme. This is like the golden arches. Everybody knows what the golden arches mean. Right? Paul is subverting that concept. No, it's not Caesar Augustus. A peace that's maintained at the point of a sword at your neck, or in our day, at the end of a gun. know an entirely different quality of peace. A peace that comes as the Lord brings us all together, which begins with being deeply connected to Jesus. So Jesus says this, just before, actually, this is just the last thing he says before he begins to pray, the high priestly prayer in the Gospel of John. I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world you'll have tribulation, but take heart, I've overcome the world. In me, Jesus says, and in me alone, you will have peace. Okay? That deep connection where we hear the Lord say, you are my chosen ones. You are holy and beloved. Oh, I can calm down. I can relax. This deep connection with Jesus, yes? And being deeply connected to one another. So Paul says in 2 Corinthians, finally, brothers, rejoice, aim for restoration, comfort one another, agree with one another, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. Do you see that? See, this is a whole other list of unity virtues. And if we were in 2 Corinthians, we could have looked at those. See, a lot of those lists aren't exhaustive. But be like this in the world with one another. And if you are, the God of love and peace will be with you. Do you see that? Do you recognize that? How does the king's peace come? Not at the end of a gun or the point of a sword, but as we're deeply connected to Jesus, deeply connected to one another. He pulls us together in perfect harmony, and we experience peace. And the world has an opportunity to see the king's peace at work in us and through us. Does that make sense? Nod your head if that makes sense, and I'll stop talking. Okay. All right? All right. That's what the Lord is up to. And the last bit that Paul says here in verse 15, and be thankful. Why? Because it doesn't happen by us trying real hard. Right? It doesn't happen by us kicking ourselves and says, I'm going to do better tomorrow. No, man. It happens as we're connected to Him. And as we experience Him in our lives, He connects us to one another. And when we have clarity about that, the proper response is gratitude. Right? The first prayer, help me, Jesus. The second prayer, thank you, Jesus. Yep. Right. And as we gather this Thursday, what an opportunity to keep this in mind. That this is what the Lord is doing. Especially when the crazy uncle comes to, comes to dinner and he's got some, whatever conspiracy theory he's cooking or whatever, right? Bear with him. Forgive him. Talk about Jesus and experience the King's peace together and be thankful. Will you bow your hearts and heads with me? And it really is a wonderful opportunity as often as we gather together, as often as we open the Scriptures alone or in a group, to turn our hearts to Him and to recognize that He is doing a profound work in our lives and in our church, in the community and in the world, to bind everything together in Him, just as He and the Father are one. And the invitation to Christian discipleship, the invitation to give your heart to Jesus, is to give yourself to that work that he is doing. You know, and pray that first prayer. Help me, Jesus. And then as he begins to move, to pray that second prayer. Thank you, Jesus. Lord, how wonderful to know that you are at work in the world and in our lives. Lord, in this Thanksgiving season, as we're gathering with friends and family, Lord, give us opportunity to speak your name. You know, to frame what's happening either around the dinner table or around the world in that wonderful context of you at work for our good and your glory. Lord, will you do that? Lord, open our hearts to you that we might live in the fullness of your love. We ask it in your wonderful, precious name. Amen. Let's stand together.